Bom dia a todos, bem-vindos ao nosso International Webinar of Beef Quality. Aqui, falando diretamente de Londrina, meu nome é Ana Maria Bride, eu sou a coordenadora do Grupo de Pesquisa e Análise de Carnes da Universidade Estadual de Londrina, e é um muito prazer que nosso grupo de pesquisa organizou e está apresentando o GEPAC, é um grupo de pesquisa e análise de carnes, como eu já falei, da Universidade Estadual de Londrina, e conta com a participação de alunos da graduação do curso de Medicina Veterinária e do curso de Zootecnia, e também com os alunos da pós-graduação do programa de pós-graduação em Ciência Animal da universidade, onde conta com os alunos de mestrado e doutorado. Além de pesquisa, o nosso grupo presta serviço para as empresas brasileiras em análise de carne. Gostaria hoje de falar um pouquinho sobre as nossas palestras que já ocorreram. A gente teve a honra de abrir esse evento com o Dr. David Hocquette, o editor da revista Meat Science, e falando sobre estimulação elétrica. Também tivemos o prazer de ter o Dr. Mindu falando sobre a parte de programação fetal. E hoje nós teremos um pesquisador do INRA, da França, o Dr. Jean-François Hocquette, que irá falar sobre... Ele vai fazer uma pergunta, talvez responder, ou talvez só deixar essa dúvida no ar, que é: será que no futuro ainda iremos consumir carnes de animais de produção, ou será que iremos só comer de laboratório? E qual é esse futuro? Ele é próximo ou é muito distante? Então, essa vai ser a grande questão, o grande debate do dia de hoje. E não esquecer que no dia 3 de setembro, às 19 horas, nós teremos a nossa última palestra, que será com o Dr. Chris Calkins, que virá falar sobre características físicas, sensoriais e químicas da carne. Então, aguardo vocês para esse último webinar. Para encerrar, gostaria de introduzir vocês a Luiene Moura Rocha. A Luiene é nossa ex-aluna, ex-integrante, ex-não, porque uma vez do GEPAC, sempre GEPAC, né, Luiene?
Sim.
Ela fez mestrado, ela é formada em zootecnia, fez mestrado na Universidade Estadual de Londrina, foi minha orientada. Depois ela fez doutorado na Universidade de Laval e fez um pós-doutorado na Universidade de Sherbrooke. E hoje ela mora em Quebec, em Sherbrooke, no Canadá, e ela vai ser a nossa anfitriã e conduzir as atividades. Então, Luiene, boa palestra. E não se esqueçam que após a apresentação, o Dr. Hocquette já está conosco aqui no backstage e irá responder as perguntas. Um abraço.
Muito obrigada pela introdução, professora. Um bom dia a todo mundo. Eu vou passar agora para a apresentação em francês, só para os nossos telespectadores que estão vendo de outros lugares. Se vocês tiverem alguma dúvida, se acontecer alguma coisa, só escreva ali nos comentários. E só lembrando, da última vez, nós tivemos um problema técnico e caiu na primeira palestra, e quando voltamos, as pessoas não estavam mais online. Então, se isso acontecer novamente, por favor, entrem no grupo do YouTube, que lá vai estar o novo link, ok? Agora eu vou passar para a apresentação em inglês, então. So, good morning, everybody. So, really welcome to our third presentation of our International Webinar of Beef Quality. So I just want to say that this webinar is being organized by the Carcass and Meat Quality Evaluation Research Group, the GPAC, from the Universidade Estadual de Londrina. And the GPAC was created in 2006 by Dr. Ana Maria Bride and is currently composed of 15 undergraduate students and 7 graduate students in animal science and veterinary medicine from Universidade Estadual de Londrina. The GPAC works closely in a close collaboration with the Brazilian industry, and they conduct research on pork and beef quality, as well as on fish meat quality. So the Universidade Estadual de Londrina, just to let you know, is located in the south of Brazil, and we are expecting some snow today, and in the state of Paraná, and it's one of the largest meat producers in the country. But to be more precise, they produce more pork and poultry meat. And now that we are all online, I'm going to start with the presentation of Dr. Hocquette. That is a really interesting, and I think that we are have a really great discussion on this topic. So I'm going to let the presentation online, and now let's stream the presentation. And don't forget, once presentation is finished, we are going to come back with the question section. So see you soon. You can play the presentation.
Good morning. I am Jean-François Hocquette, and I will present my talk entitled, Will we still eat meat from livestock in the future? First, I would like to acknowledge the organizing committee of this wonderful seminar to have invited me to present these results. The questions I would like to address today is, will we still eat meat from livestock in the future? And this is a difficult question, a tricky question for meat producers, consumers, and meat scientists as well. I would like first to acknowledge my two co-authors, Sgaia Shriki from Isara Agro School for Life, and Marie-Pierre Eliès-Houry, Bordeaux Sciences Agro. I would like to acknowledge also Jingjing Yu and Elise Hocquette in charge of a survey about a culture meat conducted in China and conducted in France, respectively. So why my talk is entitled, Will we still eat meat from livestock in the future? It's because today you have many consumers and citizens who are concerned by meat consumption. A recent article published in the New York Times was entitled, The End of Meat is Here, with a subtitle, If you care about the working poor, about racial justice, and about climate change, you have to stop eating animals. So this talk will be divided into different parts, into different questions. Why is there a problem with meat? What is meat? What is not meat? What are the drivers of meat consumption? What is meat consumers' opinion today? And what are the potential scenarios of meat consumption in the future? So I will start by this question, why is there a problem of meat? Everyone knows that the human population has increased a lot so far and will continue to increase a lot until 2050 at least. The human population will increase mainly in Asian countries, and you will have more and more urban people, less and less people in the countryside, and urban people know less and less the process of meat production, and also they know less and less how to live in the countryside. In parallel, the meat production has increased a lot, especially in Asia, to provide enough meat for this increasing human population. And the global meat production will continue to increase anyway. So the problem to solve is that the livestock and meat sectors are facing new and important challenges, balancing the need for increased production of animal products to satisfy the increasing human population in food, especially in proteins. And this should be coupled with a lower footprint. And in the meantime, we should address societal needs in terms of animal welfare and product quality for the consumer. From the FAO, it's known that protein consumption in the world varies a lot between different countries. It varies from 60 grams per person per day in India, for instance, to 112 grams per person per day in North America. But the proportions of proteins from animals and from plants vary to a greater extent. For instance, in Asian countries, especially in India, people consume a lot of proteins from plants and also dairy proteins. Whereas in North America, people eat a lot of proteins from meat and from milk, as well as in Western Europe and in Oceania. A widely distributed report indicated that global meat production will increase a lot until 2040 or 50. But in the same report, it's written that conventional meat production will decrease because it's forecasted that culture meat production will increase at the expense of conventional meat production. In parallel, you will still have meat substitutes made from plant proteins and proteins extracted from mushrooms, for instance. Indeed, more and more meat substitutes are available, either from plants, from soya, from wheat, and also from mushrooms, from algae, from insects and invertebrates. Some food tech companies would like also to commercialize 3D printed artificial meat. The principle is to prepare a meat paste from plant proteins and biosynthesized proteins, to put this paste in a printer and to print very beautiful meat dishes like this one. In the report I mentioned previously, the culture meat market is likely to extend and to be a very important market in the future, especially in North America, but maybe also in Europe, in Asian countries. So the question which is asked, is it true? Will the culture meat market develop in the world? In fact, we observed recently that the number of scientific papers dealing with culture meat increased a lot during the last years, especially from 2013, when Professor Mark Post presented the first in vitro burger in a famous restaurant in London. And we also observed in a recent published paper that the number of papers in the press media dealing with culture meat is also increasing. And this is a kind of proof that cultured meat might be successful, but we will discuss that later on. The next question I would like to address is, what is meat and what is not meat? From Wikipedia and from the dictionary, meat comes from animals, because meat is animal flesh that is eaten as food. Therefore, from this widely accepted definition, proteins from plants, even processed as a burger, are not meat and should not be called meat. In the same way, cultivated muscle cells are not meat. In an ongoing survey managed by us, 62% of respondents agreed with the statement that culture meat is not meat. So what is the principle to produce meat by cell culture? The first step is to take samples from a cow, from a pig, from a chicken. Cells are extracted from these samples, either stem cells or myoblasts. Stem cells can be converted into myoblasts, which are precursors of muscle cell fibers. Myoblasts proliferate a lot, so that you can produce a huge quantity of muscle fibers from a few myoblasts. when you have a lot of myoblasts, they fuse to form myotubes, and these myotubes are after that converted into muscle fibers. So Mark Post prepared his first in vitro burger from this process, but in fact he prepared mainly muscle fibers. From stem cells, it's also possible to culture pre-adipocytes and other cells, and you will get adipocytes, blood cells, and also connective tissue and collagen. And all these things are components of the muscle tissue. So it's possible to prepare a thin muscle tissue by co-cultures of all these cell types. And this is the strategy on another food biotech company to prepare thin muscle tissue. And the muscle tissue cannot be very thin because there is a problem of oxygen diffusion within the muscle tissue. Again, I would like to say that culture meat is not meat, as demonstrated by Professor David Hopkins in a famous editorial paper published in Meat Science. The first in vitro steak was more like an hamburger than a real piece of meat, and this is logical as it's much easier to produce a hamburger, I mean minced beef or ground beef, in vitro than a real steak. In addition to that, the hamburger has become progressively the international standard for meat, thanks to different fast food chains, and has replaced rib steaks, flank steaks, pork chops, or chicken legs as meat standard. It's well known that toughness of beef and meat increases after rigor mortis, after slaughtering of the animals. And aging is a very important process for a better meat sensory quality because tenderness increases during aging due to proteolysis of different muscle proteins by different proteases such as calpain. Beef aging or meat aging is not taken into account in the process of culture meat. So cultivated meat is not meat, but something similar to the muscle tissue, in fact, only clusters of muscle fibers with no aging. So what are the drivers of meat consumption? And what might be the drivers of consumption of culture meat? The drivers of meat consumption were initially concerned about food, because the main problem was to ensure enough food in terms of energy and proteins for the increasing human population. Later on, meat consumption as language, beliefs, religion, lifestyle became an element of culture and an element of identity of social groups, because the meat consumption differs even today between social groups. So in the past, the main drivers of meat consumption were availability of meat, concern about nutritional needs, and also cultural factors. And nowadays, the drivers are more complex. They include sensory factors, but also cultural and psychological factors, such as ethics, moral, habits, culture, and whatever. Finally, you have also marketing factors relating to the price of the meat, the brand, the label, and so on. Initially, meat was reserved for wealthier social groups, as meat was considered as a rare product. So meat was quite expensive. So it's normal to observe that meat consumption per capita increased a lot according to incomes of people. So meat consumption is today much higher in developed countries compared to underdeveloped or developing countries. Of course, there is a plateau because we cannot eat too much meat. In the ongoing survey we are managing, we ask one question, which is the following. What are the most important criteria for you during your food shopping? And you can see here the answers of Chinese people in red and the answers of French people in blue. Chinese people express concerns very different from the French concerns because, let's say, origin, traceability, sensorial quality, environmental impacts, and ethics are very important points for French people, as well as marks and labels on the product. For Chinese people, safety, nutritional value, and energy provided by the food are very important criteria. In France, beef consumption decreased a lot during the last decades, mainly due to its price, its too high price, and health concerns. Indeed, half of the population decreased its beef consumption during the last decades because the price was too high for, let's say, 31% of them, and because the potential health risk for 25% of them. In addition to these two main reasons, health scandals, animal welfare concerns, the lack of sensory consistency, and adoption of a vegetarian, flexitarian diet were other reasons. In another survey, people were asked for reason for decreased meat consumption from 2017 to 2018. And this survey was conducted in France, Spain, Germany, and UK. Health reasons are the main reasons for decreased meat consumption. Then concern about livestock practices and also slaughtering animals to eat them are also main reasons for decreased meat consumption. After that, reasons related to money, to the price, and so on are also very important, as well as environmental reasons. So what is meat consumers' opinion today? In a recent paper published a few weeks ago, it was demonstrated for a customer survey that 36% of people would like to use more alternative proteins in 2020. However, the conventional market is still predominant, but the market of other proteins is growing fast. So you can see on this picture the small proportion of the market of other proteins, but its annual growth rate is 6% compared to 3%, which is the annual growth rate of the conventional meat market. To come back to culture meat, in 2015, culture meat was almost unaccepted. Indeed, we have conducted 3 surveys, 2 by internet, 1 international survey and 1 French survey, and 1 survey by discussing with people. And we asked different questions, and one question was, according to your perception, will in vitro meat be well accepted by consumers? Will consumers buy it? And on average, between 50 to 70% of respondents answered no. And 1/3 of them answered, I don't know. I would like here to indicate that this survey was mainly conducted with educated consumers, students, scientists, or people in the academic world. However, these results were confirmed by a similar survey conducted in the United States. However, people under 40 years of age were more likely to say that they would try culture meat one day. So it means that culture meat might be successful in the next generation or in 2 generations of people. In our ongoing survey, we ask if a consumer would be willing to eat culture meat regularly in 2020. And half of Chinese people answered no. And about 70% of French people answered no. And in other countries, we had the answers between these 2 extremes. We also ask what consumers would expect from culture meat. About 10% of respondents answered nothing in China, and 42% of people answered nothing in France, and other countries being between these 2 extremes. For French people, nothing is very important because a great majority of French people reject culture meat. But in China, safety, the taste of culture meat, and its health value are important criteria. We also ask how much would you be willing to pay for culture meat compared to conventional meat. 1/3 was the same price, but 2/3 of the people answered either less or much less or nothing. Only a very small proportion answered more or much more. We also ask if consumers, what would be the reasons why consumers would not be willing to try culture meat. So in France, the main reasons were less trust in laboratories, negative impact on territories, rural life, and on local farmers. And the main reason was that culture meat was perceived as a non-natural product, an artificial product. In China, safety is a main concern. In the last part of my talk, I would like to describe briefly the potential scenarios of meat consumption in the future. So meat is today a social issue because scientists in the developed world think that the invention of artificial meat can save the planet. On the contrary, in underdeveloped countries, people cannot afford meat. So what is meat for them? A recent publication explained that the required degree of changes in habits is a major driver of food acceptance. And these authors made a difference between social institutional changes and technological changes. If you want to substitute meat by existing plant or dairy proteins, it would be easy because the required degrees of changes are quite low, either for social institutional changes and technological changes. But for culture meat, it's the opposite. We need huge social institutional changes and technological changes. This is the reason why some authors claim that culture meat is already obsolete compared to plant-based alternatives, because plant-based alternatives do exist in the market, they are already commercialized, and culture meat is not commercialized at all now. So the meat market today is quite simple. You have on one hand conventional meat, and on the other hand meat substitutes made with plant proteins and proteins extracted from mushrooms. It's likely that the meat market will be more complex in the future. You will have conventional meat, but also food tech. I mean meat produced from cloned animals, from GMO, maybe from in vitro meat. And you will have also probably agroecology and meat produced according to agroecology. We can think that meat substitutes belong to this family of products because they are extracted from, you have proteins extracted from plants, from mushrooms, and from insects. However, today, some scientists have strange ideas. So this Japanese scientist said that he has developed a burger made from soya, steak sauce, and also proteins extracted from human feces present in seaweed sludge of Tokyo. And this scientist claims that this process is very cheap, ready to use, and therefore likely to be very sustainable. He also said that this product is probably tasty. More seriously, I would like now to explore different routes for the future. One route might be to develop agroecology, as I said before, because agroecology takes benefit of natural processes for sustainability. And you have 5 principles of agroecology which could be applied to livestock farming. So the first one is decreasing the inputs needed for production. It means, in case of cattle and sheep, to take benefit of forages, grass, pastures. The second principle would be to adopt management practices to improve animal health. The third one is preserving biological diversity in agroecosystem by adapting management practices. The fourth one will be enhancing diversity within systems to strengthen their resilience. And the last one will be decreasing pollution by optimizing the metabolic functioning of farming system. And you will see more details about these principles in the review paper by my colleague Bertrand Dumont, this paper being published in Animal. So on this line, you can see that when you have cattle and pasture, is good for the biodiversity of plants. It's also good for the climate change because the soil of pasture is able to improve carbon sequestration. You have natural feeding, and grass is rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids, so you have meat which is good for the human health. The cows are happy, and the landscape is beautiful. So this is the reason why you have a great number of labels and commercial brands which advertise grass feeding or also improve standards for living conditions, treatment of breeding and handling of animals. You have also good standards for animal welfare and for sustainable agriculture. The second route to increase food production available for the increasing human population is to change our food habits. And this is very important because eating less not only will improve food availability, but also will contribute to decrease greenhouse gases emissions. Because carbon footprint from food depends more on the nutrition level rather than on composition of the diet. In addition to that, it was demonstrated that we have a great proportion of food which is lost, because waste and loss represent about 1/3 of our food production. And food waste and losses are so important that they contribute to decrease greenhouse gases emission. So if you reduce food waste and losses, you will decrease greenhouse gases emissions. You can see on this graph that greenhouse gases emissions of current food waste and losses are more important than greenhouse gases emissions of some countries like Russia, India, or Japan. So the current recommendations today are to reduce waste and losses of food, but also to reduce food consumption in Europe and in developed countries, because we eat more than our needs. So we are encouraged to reduce our food consumption to the level of 3,000 kilocalories per day per person. So this implies reducing meat consumption and increasing fruit and vegetables and cereals in our diet. In fact, we eat too much proteins in our developed countries, because the proportion of animal proteins is about 66% of total proteins. So we should decrease our protein intake, and we should decrease protein intake from animal sources to reach the level of 50-50, 50 from animal sources and 50% of proteins from plant sources. However, the recommendations for other countries or other parts of the world are different. For instance, in some part of Africa, people should, of course, eat more and more animal proteins, more meat, to meet their nutritional needs. So in conclusions, the success of meat substitutes is partly due to the new social drivers of meat consumption. I mean the necessity to improve human health, animal welfare, and to reduce the environmental impact of food and of meat especially. The urbanization of human beings, further and further away from rural culture, has brought about a decrease in knowledge and acceptance of conventional meat production, making people also less able to express a critical and informed view about culture meat. So I said in my talk that meat does bring with it positive health, social, and historical values. The future market of meat is likely to be very complex, and the future of cultivated meat is uncertain. So we should move towards sustainable meat production. And sustainability is based on 4 pillars. One pillar is the economic pillar. One pillar is the environmental pillar. We need to protect the environment and to reduce the climate change. Another pillar is animal and human health. And the 4th pillar is answering to social needs in terms of ethics, in terms of protecting animals. And it's quite obvious that eating local products and food produced locally is very important. And in that way, we should favor bioeconomy. And bioeconomy is based on the use of renewable biological resources, because bioeconomy implies recycling of raw materials that cannot be consumed by humans. And bioeconomy is also based on production of organic fertilizer. So feeding humans cannot be sustainable without animals and without animal products, but it's necessary to change intensive production system in competition with human needs. This implies the use of more ruminants to have diets with no more than 50% of dietary proteins from animal sources, and to have diets produced and diets and food produced with no competition with human needs. And again, ruminants are very interesting for that because they take benefit of forages and grass, which cannot be eaten directly by human beings. I would like to thank you to have listened to me, but finally, I would like to advertise the World Congress for Animal Production, which will be held in Lyon and August of 2023. And this meeting will be organized jointly with the annual meeting of the European Federation of Animal Science. Finally, I would like to say that I mentioned some results in my slides coming from an ongoing survey about culture meat. And this survey is available in English, Chinese, French, and it will be soon available in Portuguese and Spanish. If you want to answer to the English survey, please go to this website, and our colleague from Brazil, Professor Sergio Batili-Fentler, will distribute this survey in Portuguese. So I would like to thank you again, all of you, for your attention, and I'm open to answer any questions. So thank you very much again.
So hello everybody, we are back. So first of all, on behalf of everyone here, I would like to thank you, Dr. Hocquette, for this great presentation. It's a really, really interesting talk. And just before I introduce Dr. Hocquette, I would like to first thank you everybody that participates from the GPAC, the group. They are behind here on backstage. They are working really hard. So thank you very much. And I also would like to introduce myself. So my name is Luyen. I am an animal scientist from the Universidade Estadual de Londrina, and I am a PhD in animal welfare and meat quality from Université Laval. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Jean-François Hocquette. I'm going to read his CV so we can just call him to be here live with us. So hello, Dr. Hocquette.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, that's good. So I'm going to read your CV to introduce you.
Okay.
So Dr. Jean-François Hocquette, he's an agronomist from the Institut National Agronomique de Paris-Grignon. He has a degree in deep studies in cellular and fundamental endocrinology from the Université de Paris 9. He has a degree in deep studies in animal nutrition from the Université de Paris 6. He has a PhD in endocrinology from the Université de Paris 9. He is a research director at the French National Institute of Agricultural Research, the Clermont-Ferrand in France. He is actively participating in the European Federation of Animal Science, the EAAP, since 2000. And Dr. Hocquette is now president of the EAAP Cattle Commission. He's an active member of the French-Chinese Center for Beef Production. He's also a former associate editor of the BMC Genomics, and he was twice editor of the EAAP book. And he's also was awarded by the French Meat Academy in 2010 and received in 2014 an Animal Growth and Development Award from the American Society of Animal Science, the ASAS. And He has more than 150 scientific publications as author and collaborator in the field of muscle biology, genomics, and consumer studies. So, Dr. Hocquette, it's a really great pleasure to have you with us today. So thank you very much for accepting this invitation. And I would open now the questions and answers. So if you have any question for Dr. Hocquette, so you can just send it, and our backstage is gonna put it in the screen. So thank you, Dr. Hocquette. Do you want to talk something before?
Thank you very much for your kind words. It's a pleasure to be here as well. And thanks to have listened to me. I saw that there are many questions on this topic, so I'm pleased to answer these questions if I can. Not sure I will be able to answer all questions.
Oh, I think that I must believe that yes, you will, for sure. It's gonna be a really great discussion on this topic. So for the first question, so excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank
In
you.
your opinion, what is the lowest market price that laboratory meat could reach in 30 years? Dollars per kilo, or what would be an acceptable market price?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know how to answer these questions. Probably leaders of different startups or private companies have ideas about these questions. So maybe around half the price of conventional meat might be a good solution based on the first results of our survey. But it's just a personal opinion. I have no strong opinion about this. Sorry for that.
Okay, that's perfect. So talking about the physical aspects, the cultured meat, just a little bit. Are you hearing me well?
Yes.
Okay. So talking about the physical aspects, the cultured meat just could be ground meat. And about sensory characteristics, how the toughness works. The clean meat is softer than through meat.
So to my knowledge, there is only a few prototypes of culture meat. The first one was the in vitro burger from Professor Mark Post. Another one is a thin muscle tissue prepared by the private company Alice Farms from Israel. So I think that you have a different process to prepare culture meat. The simplest one will deliver ground beef or maybe a burger, and the most complex one will deliver a muscle tissue, which will be very thin because it's difficult to prepare a thick tissue because of oxygen diffusion problems. With a thick tissue, it is much more difficult to have a good diffusion of oxygen compared to a very thin one.
Okay.
And what about sensorial characteristics? I have seen no good report comparing sensorial characteristics of culture meat compared to conventional meat. And you have different papers which speculated about that. And most of the work are based on a hypothesis. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, that's good. So the next question is, I would like to know if you believe it is possible until market is adapted with this new product to market artificial meat in the same place where the meat of animals' origin is sold.
So I discussed with many leaders of private companies who would like to sell artificial meat or culture meat. And one of them said, okay, I am in competition with conventional meat. So I would like to fight against the market of conventional meat. But on the contrary, another leader said, I'm not in competition with conventional meat. I just want to put on the market a new product for consumers because we will not have enough conventional meat to satisfy the increasing needs of the increasing human population. So you can see different strategies. So myself, I'm not here to sell anything, so I have no strategy.
Okay, that's good. So the next question, congratulations, Dr. Hocquette, on the great lecture. We are very grateful for your presence in this event. What's the best name to cultured meat when the consumer's acceptance is concerned?
Okay, many of my colleagues in different countries, many scientists involved in social science have studied this point, and they have compared different wordings or different names, such as artificial meat, in vitro meat, clean meat, animal-free meat, or whatever. And the acceptance of the wording in clean meat might be better, because consumers would like to meat with no problems with the environment, and also no problem with animals.
Animal welfare.
Yes, animal welfare as well. So there are different wordings, and some wordings with a better acceptance by consumers. But let's say so far, artificial meat or in vitro meat or lab meat or fake meat are the most common words used so far in the scientific literature or in the press media. So cultivated meat or artificial meat are known like this: artificial or cultivated meat.
Okay. So another question, what is known so far about the difference between the nutritional contents of laboratory meat, mainly in terms of vitamins and minerals?
This is an excellent question. So to be honest, I don't know very well, because I didn't see any report or any good report comparing artificial meat and conventional meat. And there was a paper recently published by a team from Belgium, and they speculated about this. And they said that, in fact, it's very difficult to reproduce the vitamin or micronutrient contents within artificial meat, in terms, not only in terms of contents, but also in terms of digestibility or something like that, biodisponibility, because of course, as you know, vitamins, micronutrients should be in the matrix of meat to be assimilated by human beings. So there is a great deal of research to be done.
Okay, so we had a question that is adding to the Fluencer's question. So the question that we just did before, is there B12 vitamin in the cultured meat?
In my understanding, from my knowledge, people who would like to prepare artificial meat just add at the end of the process the compounds they want to have in artificial meat, if this compound is not present during the process. So, for instance, with concerning iron or vitamin B12, it might be much easier to add them at the end of the process to give let's say color, to give or to enhance the nutritional value. It's the same problem for omega-3 fatty acids.
Okay, that's perfect. Before I just do the next question, I just want to remember everybody that if something happens, if the stream just fall off, we are be back, okay? Just because if I forgot to say it. So just go back to the YouTube channel and there we'll have a new link if we fall like the first time. So now we have another question, Dr. Hocquette. And is the process of digestibility of laboratory meat in the human body already known?
So I'm sorry, but to my knowledge, it's not already known. So I saw no data regarding this specific point. So I'm sorry for that.
Okay, so it's an idea to this future projects. So congratulations on the presentation, very enlightening. What will be the environmental impact with the production of cultured meat, considering all the inputs needed for large-scale production?
It's an excellent question. To my knowledge, there were three very good publications regarding this topic. And the first one in 2011 said that there is a great advantage for culture meat. There is another one in 2015 which had a different point of view. So it was an advantage for normal meat. And in 2019, there was a very precise publication which described the increase in methane and in carbon dioxide following a normal meat production and following increase in artificial meat production. And the main idea is that methane has a short half-life in the atmosphere, and CO2 has a long half-life. So because of that, on a long term, artificial meat will more increase greenhouse gases concentrations in the atmosphere compared to livestock, because the two produce different greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And all these studies are based on hypotheses and modeling work. So there is a great uncertainty in this study, because artificial meat doesn't exist now at a commercial scale. So it's difficult to calculate very precisely the environmental impact.
Okay. So thank you for this interesting discussion. Professor,
thank you.
Do you think the use of autochthonous animal breeds could be useful to increase the meat production in agroecology production systems?
So we have indeed in France some programs to protect local breeds which might be in danger. It's more or less linked to agroecology, but in fact, yes, we can save, let's say, local breeds in danger, and with, let's say, new livestock practices, or very well adapted livestock systems adapted to these breeds.
Okay. So thanks, Dr. Hocquette, for the great presentation. In Brazil, that we lack subsidies for small producers. How is the best approach, in your opinion, to improve sustainability in meat sector?
So to improve sustainability in the meat sector, probably we should revise, let's say, the economic system, so that farmers might earn more money if the meat which is produced is of very high quality, and if livestock protect the environment. So we know some private companies which change their mind in the economic system to provide more money to farmers according to, let's say, a higher quality of beef, and according also to environmental concerns. So it's possible to change the economic system in that way to improve sustainability of beef production.
Okay. So artificial meat so far is a futuristic concept, but if true meat is 100% imitated, what is the meat scientist, industry, and consumers' perspective for the future? Will meat become an illicit product?
So it's very difficult to predict the future. So today, many people say that artificial meat will come very soon, but some people disagree. So there is a debate about the possibility to have artificial meat on the market very soon. It's not very clear so far. So to answer your question, I don't think that in any case artificial meat will replace conventional meat totally on the market. So you will still have farmers. So I met also some farmers who imagine their job in a different way. So they imagine that they can take themselves muscle biopsy. So they will keep animals for them. And from muscle biopsy, they will produce artificial meat in their farm. So in the mind of these farmers, it's possible to combine conventional meat and artificial meat production in the same place. So it might be, in their mind, a new model. Anyway.
Okay, so I would just take advantage of this question, and I'm going to ask a question from myself. So thinking about the professionals that work in the area, how could we prepare ourselves for this reality? So what's the challenge that we have for cultured meat today that we can start to study and prepare, to be a specialist in cultured meat? Because we have the meat scientists for the conventional meat. So what's the challenge for the cultured meat?
I think that scientists who are not really involved in research on this topic, I mean scientists in social science, in environmental science, should provide more accurate data about the environmental impact of cultured meat and about potential acceptance by consumers. And this type of research should be provided by independent scientists who are not concerned, not involved in the process of selling artificial meat one day.
Okay.
So it's the mission of, let's say, public research in one way.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So we have one more question here. Dr. Hocquette, congratulations for the lecture. Which would be the main limitation for consumer acceptance of cultured meat?
It's difficult to answer these questions, but I would like to cite here results from Verbeek and collaborators in Belgium. So they have published a very interesting study in which they said that the first feeling of consumers is disgust, and consumers will not accept that. But after thinking, consumers may become aware of potential pros and cons of artificial meat, and they will balance let's say, positive points and negative points in their mind. Positive points are mainly positive points for the society and for the planet, or for all people together. And negative points might be negative points for the people themselves, because they worry about safety, about health issues, and so on. And when you balance collective positive points with personal, let's say, negative points, you are more concerned by your person, and maybe the balance might be negative. And after that, when people think a little bit more, they might be ready to accept artificial meat if there is a strong controlled system to ensure safety and health for consumers.
Okay, that's good. So Just to finish the question and answer section, I had another question from myself. So since the Brazil is one of the most producers of meat and producing cultured meat, we are going to decrease, even if we do both together, we are going to decrease the grains productions, we are going to decrease the use of lands. I would like to know what perspective you see, how it impacts in our economy.
Probably it's too early to predict that, but the production of artificial meat raises a great question about the society we want. Do we want a society driven by, let's say, food tech and private companies, or let's say big companies which will produce artificial meat? Or do we want a society driven by local farmers, local people in the countryside, and things like that? So behind the technical progress, you have huge questions about the type of society we want. So I'm not here to answer this question, but I would like each person, each of you, to think about that and to, let's say, to analyze what could be the consequences of artificial meat at a large scale. So I don't know myself what will be the future, but please try to think about this to be well prepared in case artificial meat comes in the market.
Okay, that's really great advice. So first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Hocquette, for your great presentation and really nice discussion that we had here today. So I would also like to thank you the presence of Chris Calkins that is watching your presentation with us, and he's saying here, congratulations on an interesting presentation. Thank you, Dr. Hocquette.
And thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be involved in this seminar. So I don't know how many people attended, but anyway, it was a great pleasure for me.
Oh, for sure. And I think we have more than 100 people live with us now. And remember that this presentation will be saved and it will be available after, so people can watch it later on their homes. Okay. And as well, now we are going to put some comments that people made during the presentation and during the discussion. So we have here, congratulations to Dr. Hocquette for the great lecture. We are thankful for this opportunity, and thanks to the GPAC for the organization of this event. And we have another one. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thanks very much to everyone.
And again, thank you very much for accepting the invitation, for being here with us, and for, giving your time for us and giving the results, the research that you do. It's really important. We have also another one. Merci, Dr. Hocquette. Very well. So amazing lecture. Another one, amazing lecture, very clear. Thank you, Dr. Hocquette.
And I will be happy to answer to more questions if needed.
So for sure, thank you for availability. And in name of everybody, I would say another one, thanks to Professor Hocquette. So in name of everybody, I would say merci beaucoup d'avoir pris votre temps, d'être ici avec nous et de répondre à nos questions. C'est vraiment un grand plaisir. So it's a big pleasure to have you here. So, and we have another comment here. Very good. Congrats to Professor Hocquette and the webinar organizers. Someone is telling me to ask you, has you ever been to Brazil?
I've never been to Brazil. I'm sorry for that. I would like, yes.
No, if you would like, I think you have some invitation from one of our, we never know. So you could come to Brazil to know a little bit about our beef production cattle. So I think someone can invite Dr. Hocquette to come to Brazil to see our really great production.
It will be with pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you. So now I'm gonna leave Dr. Hocquette, and I'm gonna just to remember you, don't forget September 3rd, we'll have Chris Calkins to close this great international webinar of beef quality. And once again, I would like to thank you very much, all of you that took your time to be here with us, and also to say that to thank Dr. Mindu and Dr. Oh my God, that's really frustrating. I just forgot the name. I'm kind of nervous, and Dr. Hocquette and our first presentation, it was really good to have this international webinar. So thank you very much. And I really wish you a really great day, and see you on September 3rd. Don't forget. See you.
With pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.